Now, I think in what I just quoted, um, I may have to go back and read that more carefully, but I think one of the things that Kenny was saying is that Descartes is begging the question when he uses the ontological argument. Um, but that's kind of surprising that he would say that, because in the next section, when Kenny is talking about the so-called Cartesian circle, he says that Descartes is not begging the question with respect to the Cartesian circle. So the two main places where people normally say that Descartes is special, or not special pleading, but is begging the question, are with the ontological argument and with the Cartesian circle. We need God to know that we can trust our senses, says Descartes, but then he uses the senses to prove the existence of God. So people say that that's circular reasoning. Um, and again, it's interesting that Kenny says that no, he's not using circular reasoning. Um, so continuing on with Kenny, Descartes' friend Antoine Arnaud thought he detected a circle in the argument here. Arnaud said, "We can be sure that God exists only because we clearly and evidently perceive that he does. Therefore, prior to being certain that God exists, we need to be certain that whatever we clearly and evidently perceive is true. There is not, in fact, any circularity," and that ends the quote of Arnaud. "There is not, in fact, any circularity in Descartes' argument. To see this, we must make a distinction between particular clear and distinct perceptions and the general principle that what we clearly and distinctly perceive is true. Individual intuitions, as that I exist or that 2 and 3 make 5, cannot be doubted as long as I continue clearly and distinctly to perceive them. But though I cannot doubt something I am here and now clearly and distinctly perceiving, I can, prior to proving God's existence, doubt the general proposition that whatever I clearly and distinctly perceive is true." And then he just goes on and talks more about the Cartesian circle. So it's um, we have we have to, uh, when we're using logic to prove things, we have to assume that logic will work correctly. Um, so the foundations of logic themselves aren't proved, um, but we use the foundations of logic to prove other things. So, like in mathematics, for example, we can't have every term defined. There has to be some terms that are undefined. That's why when you look in a dictionary of words, not a mathematics, but just a general dictionary, you'll see some words that are defined, um, like the word sleepy, for example, might be defined as the act of being tired from not getting enough sleep. So we're using the word in the definition of the word, which you're not supposed to do, but we can't define every word um, in that way without appealing to the word itself. So we may have um, certain terms in mathematics, and I suppose in language as well, that aren't defined, because we define one word by other words, and each of those words we define by other words. We have to start somewhere. So it seems that Kenny is coming close to admitting that here, which is a good thing, um, because it's true. We have to start somewhere. So in the case of Descartes, he's using his reason to prove the existence of God, and you may feel that he is not offering a sound argument, but that was his intention, to offer a sound argument for the existence of God. Could it be that God is deceiving him, or that a devil is deceiving Descartes into thinking that logic works? Well, no, because God is there to ensure that that doesn't happen, we could say. And that is where this charge comes from of the Cartesian circle. But like Kenny realizes, we have to start assuming that logic is going to work in order to do logic. We're not going to use logic if we have to prove it first, because we can't prove it. We prove things with it. We don't prove the fundamental foundational aspects of it. But the bottom line is, as I see it, of what I wanted to say, is that it seems that the two reasons why uh, the philosopher Anthony Kenny rejects Descartes' ontological argument is, number one, um, it is begging the question, allegedly. Um, the not begging the question with respect to the Cartesian circle, but begging the question by saying, um, we're assuming that God exists and then proving that God exists from using the definition of God to prove that God exists, but we smuggle into the premises the conclusion that God does in fact exist. But that is how deductive logic works. The idea that we're trying to prove is present in the premises. Um, in a valid argument, you're never going to have a conclusion that isn't included in the premises. So we are moving in a linear fashion in this Cartesian argument, the ontological argument of Descartes, from the idea of God. God is a perfect being. A perfect being has all perfections. And God may or may not exist, but the idea of God is that he is a perfect being, that he has all perfections. We can't say, uh, as I think it was Bertrand, I think Bertrand Russell said this, but also I think Kenny kind of implied it as well, that uh, to say that God doesn't exist is not contradictory. But I would maintain that it is a contradiction, because if God is defined as the supreme being, as the being who has all ontological perfections, that would include necessary existence. Um, so we can't say that a necessary being, a being that by nature must exist, does not exist. That's self-contradictory. So to say that a being which has to exist does not exist would certainly be a contradiction. In conclusion, the ontological argument as framed by Descartes seems to be sound and non-circular, and to not beg the question, though Anthony Kinney would seem to disagree with that. Well, thank you for listening to what I had to say. It was kind of rambling because I didn't have a script. I hope I was being clear. When people talk about the ontological argument, it can get very confusing if they're kind of mumbling and ranting and so on. So I apologize for that, but hopefully you're getting the gist of what I'm trying to say. Shalom out. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe if you don't already, and have a great day. Thanks.